don't think people understand. It's very tough to break into this industry, and the way you've done it as an actor, producer, director, I mean, it's really something to talk about.
I acted in The Irishman, but then, I also directed Inside Man and Mob Town and now Mob Cop.
Let's talk about this great film you got coming up on Friday. I mean, I knew the story, and I was familiar with it a little bit while I was on the street. We were able to manipulate and do some things with cops, but never to the extent of what these mob cops did.
I fought to try to get this movie made. You gotta fight to tell these kind of stories. It's one of those stories that has to be told. I didn't understand how there's not a movie about it.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end, my friends. As always, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. I have a very special guest today. His name was Danny Abeckaser, and he's a very good writer, director, producer, starred in a number of films, and has done some great work. And let me tell you something, people. When I say writer, producer, actor, that's not easy to accomplish. I don't think people know how significant that accomplishment is in this industry. It's very tough to get going. And a good friend of mine, Mario Lopez, everybody knows Mario. He contacted me a couple of days ago and he says, hey, I got this friend, Danny A, got this great movie coming out called Mob Cops. We're going to get into that a little bit. He says he'd love to talk to you. So him and I jumped on a text and we set up this interview. He sent me a preview of the movie, which I watched and really enjoyed, Mob Cops. And if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Michael Connelly, who wrote the, Michael Cannell, I'm sorry, who wrote the book Blood and the Badge. And it was the true story about Louis Eppolito and Caracappa, the two mob cops. What an amazing story it was. He did a brilliant job on the book, a lot of research, so on and so forth. And I was wondering at that time, why haven't they made this into a movie? Well, and then I get contacted by Mario, I speak with Danny A, and now we're interviewing him today, and the movie was made, and they did a really good job. And it's not easy to do films like this. He's an independent film maker. Lionsgate is releasing it. That's a big deal, big company. They love the film, and I really enjoyed it, and I think he captured the essence of these two characters. Let me tell you, this was one of the greatest scandals, if not the greatest scandals, not only in the NYPD in New York, but in the entire country. I mean, there's one or two that might match something like this, but it was unbelievable what these two cops did, Eppolito and Caracappa. He changed the names in the film, but he captured the essence of the characters pretty well. Now, I think I told you the last time that I was cellmates with Rosario Gambino, who had something to do with Eppolito. Eppolito had got him some information that he snuck out of one of his precincts. Kind of gave Rosario some advance notice on some things that were happening with him, with some legal issues he was having. And so I have some insight into them. Obviously, I knew Gaspipe, Queso pretty well, and he was kind of their boss at the time. He was the one giving them instructions. I think they captured his character really good in this film. This guy, Joey Russo, is a brilliant actor. He played Joey Gallo in the film, the television series The Offer, and did a great job. He's kind of a Pesci-like character. But I'm interested in talking to this guy, Danny. Like I said, he did a great job on the film. I think you're all going to enjoy it. It's called Mob Cops. It's coming out this Friday. It's going to have a national release. It'll be in theaters in selected cities and also on video on demand. So you're going to see it both ways. But great film. I suggest that you watch it, get it whatever way you can. And without any further delay, my special guest, Danny A. So Danny, pleasure to meet you, my friend.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I watch your show maybe every day of my life, no matter where I am. I'm in New York, I'm overseas. I go to bed watching YouTube, and most of the time I'm watching you. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. Just don't get sick of me now if you're seeing too much of me.
No. Actually, I'm into that whole world, but I'm really into the way, and I just love the way you speak and the way you tell the story. It's very intriguing and it's very good, and I'm a big fan, so I was excited when I spoke to Lopez, and he was like, I know him. He's a good friend of mine. Let's see what we can do.
Excellent. No, it worked out. Mario's a good guy, so this is all good. Maybe one day we'll get together. You're in L.A., right?
Yeah, I'm in L.A. Oh, yeah, I'm traveling a lot, but I'm in L.A. That's where I'm based.
Yeah, when I come into town, because I'm here in Orange County, we'll get together, have some dinner, and shoot the breeze about the old days, the good old bad days, I call them.
Sounds good to me. I would love that.
Well, listen, I understand you started out in the club scene in New York, right?
Oh yeah. So I started as a club promoter back in the day. I mean, early 92, 93 kind of. But I didn't take it serious, and for me it was just like a fun way to like go out and meet friends and get in for free. And
Right.
but it really took off, and I became kind of like a symbol of nightlife, and then I ended up owning a few of my own clubs and doing pretty well with it. But I always had the bug to do the movie stuff, so I just kept doing it because I was being successful at it. But it was fun while it lasted.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, that's a little bit, after my time that you were involved, but did you ever meet any of my former associates, any of my friends bouncing those clubs?
I started 95, 96. I Most of the time I would go to a place called Tattoo. I had a party at a place Tattoo, Limelight, Palladium, those places. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I think China Club, maybe.
China Club, yeah. Limelight also at one time. I don't know if they stopped after I left, but Limelight was a hot spot too for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Limelight was hard for a while. But again, I was a kid. I didn't know anything. I was in my early 20s, didn't really know anybody, but I mean, but that's where I first started. As things started progressing, then it got much bigger, and I could tell you every club that I worked at and how, and what we ended up doing.
To all my friends and followers out there, question, are you enjoying Franzese wine? I already know the answer. So many of you have sent me comments and talked about how you're enjoying the wine. Well, how about this? Now you have a chance to actually become part of the company, get a piece of the action. Look at all of our new products, our pomegranate wine, our blackberry wine that I'm enjoying, I really love. We also have our Areni, our Malbec, all great products. We're in all the major retail stores right now. Tremendous growth over the past couple of years. Those people that got involved early on in our first We Funder campaign have seen massive growth. They're all very happy. Well, now you have a chance, probably the last chance, to get involved again. Go to invest.franzesewine.com and register for our webinar. We're going to break it all down, tell you exactly where we've been and exactly where we're going. This is your chance. It's an offer you shouldn't refuse, probably the last time. Invest.franzesewine.com. Register now. Well, I know you have I don't want to call it a fascination, but you have an interest in this whole mob genre, in the mob life itself. How did that happen?
Well, I don't know if it's a fascination. So, growing up, just like any other kid in Brooklyn, I watched all of Scorsese's movies. Goodfellas and Casino, and Mean Streets, and those are always my favorite movies. Bronx Tale. Uh, and just because Godfather Part Two is my favorite movie of all time. I just think it's the greatest movie ever made. So the characters themselves were interesting to me. Plus, I grew up in Brooklyn, so a lot of people that I knew growing up, well, in my neighborhood, I knew a bunch of people that were in that world or in that life. For us, it was just being neighbors and being friends. But we've seen a bunch of the guys around. But when you start seeing them in movies, it glorifies everything for you, and it kind of gives you like a perspective, because in the real world, in my real world, uh, it just looks so glamorous, but I didn't have the balls to do any of that. I wanted all the glory without having any of the risk. But when you look at it in the movie sense and you start figuring out these characters, it was just so interesting to me. Just like, especially Scorsese, with Goodfellas, these characters are tough guys, but they're funny and they're charming and they get all the girls and have all the money. So I was always attracted to that character, and that's just piqued my interest. And then when I started making my films, I figured, I'd do some stuff that I know about, subjects that I'm kind of familiar with, people that I grew up with, the kind of environment that I grew up around. And then as I get, my feet wet, then start going into other things. And unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, I got involved with a lot of films that were about the mob. You know what I mean? I acted in The Irishman. which was great. But then, I also directed Inside Man and Mob Town and now Mob Cop. So everyone's like, oh, he makes gangster movies. But the reality is, I also made a movie about a basketball player. I made a love story. I just did a film about October 7th. So it's not all that, but that's really what's the most glorifying thing about all this film stuff for me.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, Danny, because I speak to a lot of these young gangbangers, and they say the exact same thing. A lot of them growing up in Brooklyn or watching the movies, they say, man, we looked at you guys. You always had the best suits on, the best, cars. You always had women around you. It was great. We wanted to be you. And then I'll tell them, yeah, but, you love Goodfellas. Oh, yeah. Well, didn't you watch the end of the movie? Who went to jail? Who became an informant? Who got killed? They don't see that part. They only see all the, the romanticized part of the life. And I get it. So, especially young guys growing up in Brooklyn, it was a big deal. No doubt about it.
For us, I mean, as a kid, I would see everyone riding in their back then, the new Cadillacs and tinted windows and 86th Street. All these things were so appealing to me. But I knew early on that I'm not that guy. This is not my lifestyle. I grew up in a different family and different neighborhood. I mean, different kind of like environment. But once I got interested in films, I figured, I can portray these kind of actors because I've been around them. I understand their kind of like mannerisms and been around them basically my whole life. But to be one, I don't think I could ever pull that off. No.
Well, I got to tell you, Danny, you've had a good career. You've acted in a number of films, and then, of course, producer and director. And we'll get into Mob Cops, the subject of today. But it's very tough. I don't think people understand. It's very tough to break into this industry, and the way you've done it as an actor, producer, director. I mean, it's really something to talk about, especially a young kid from Brooklyn. I know your family immigrated here back in the 80s, I think, 1980s. So, it's commendable where you've gotten to at this point. I got to ask you something, though. The movie Inside Man, you portrayed Roy DeMeo, somebody I knew extremely well. I'm sure you knew a lot about the character before you took that role.
Yeah. So look, when I decided to play him, I tried to cast someone to play him. And I couldn't find the right actor to do it. And then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna play him. I figured I need to gain weight. I gained 25 pounds, I think, 26 pounds. I tried to gain more. And I did all the homework I could on him. And there's not much, there's only a few little videos on YouTube that you can watch of what he was like. And from what I gathered, he was well spoken, unassuming guy. It was not like he was like over the top. So I kind of created the character kind of like how I kind of saw it in my own head because there's not much that you can see. Now, obviously, someone like yourself knew him personally and would be able to give me, but back then I didn't have anyone to speak to. In my mind, I just thought that he was very intimidating, and just by being more quiet, I felt like quiet is better than being too loud. Sometimes a dog that barks doesn't bite in my mind, kind of like the way I was playing him. But I don't know. I mean, some people, I mean, I've gotten a lot of compliments that they really liked the performance. I tried my best.
No, I think you did a good job, and I knew Roy fairly well. I'll give you a quick story. I had two Jaguars way back then. This was, I think, early 80s. And I had a 2-door and a 4-door, and I had them parked out of, I owned some condos in Queens. And I wake up in the morning, both cars are gone, right? So I know Roy had a chop shop. So, I started calling around, and I finally got him on the phone. I said, hey, Roy, I said, it just so happens, if you happen to know anybody around that maybe have found two Jaguars, I said, I'd really appreciate it, as a friendly gesture that if you find out, maybe I can get them back. Well, by that night, I had them both back. So, yeah. So, I mean, I called the right guy.
Yeah.
But no, I think you did a good job. And, you're right. He was kind of unassuming. If you spoke to Roy, you wouldn't understand what was, going on within him. And, of course, I spent some time at the Gemini and, rough situation. But, no, I thought you did a good job. I was just wondering, how you felt about it. Because Roy was something else.
I have to separate a scene from actually really thinking about what's going on in it. And that's just the only way to make these kind of films, especially the tough scenes, when we're caught cutting people's bodies in the bathtub and stuff like that. So I made a light of it and tried to just go scene by scene. I didn't go too deep into it. You know, the one scene that was really pretty difficult for me is sitting down with Emil Hirsch in the desk and start kind of questioning him, because it was like a one-on-one, and I'm trying to be intimidating, but without wanting him to feel like I'm being intimidating. And I've never been in that position where I'm trying to like intimidate someone. So that was challenging, but for the most part, I didn't think too much of it. I didn't go deep into it and go, I'm playing, this notorious killer. I just kind of looked at it as a role, and try to do the best that I can with changing a lot of my mannerisms, the way Danny, would speak and the way I would walk and look. So yeah.
Well, good job. And, unfortunately, what happened to him, Danny, guys in that life that it's always about violence first, violence first, violence first. I've never failed to see it. They're the first ones that go at some point, because it's unfortunate what happened, but it happened, and hey, we move on. Let's talk about this great film you got coming up on Friday. This Friday, the 25th, it's going to be released theatrically through Lionsgate, and also video on demand. I understand, correct?
Yeah, so it's called Day and Date. It's in theaters, 25 cities, and on demand. So it'll be available on the 25th. And I'm really excited with this movie. Again, going back to what you asked me, Ben, that was so, important that you kind of like pinpointed my whole fascination with it's not really a fascination, it's just that I kind of like grew up hearing about these stories, and then I kind of research and go, why they never made a film about this, they never made a film about this, and finding ways to try to make it uh through public domain and all these kind of things. Obviously we changed the names, and it's based on true events. It's not,
Right.
um but like I said, Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies. And after watching it, you realize that character was in it. And then you start doing the backstory, you start reading about it, you start realizing who this guy was. And that's how I started picking up on, his story. And then, the 60-minute interviews growing up I watched. And I just felt like, it's one of those stories that has to be told. I didn't understand how there's not a movie about it. But like we talked about, I'm the type of person that you know, if I want to do something, I'm gonna try to figure out the best way to do it. And I'm kind of like a doer, a go-getter. And I wanted to make this film. It was not easy. I also realized I can't shoot it in New York. I have to shoot it in LA. So what do you do? Because flying everybody to New York and getting the permits and doing all that, it would have been a nightmare
Yeah.
to make it legitimate. So we ended up shooting at the Warner Brother lot and the New
Mm.
York lot, and try to make it as realistic as possible, because this takes place in the 80s and 90s and a little bit in the 2000 in Las Vegas towards the end. I wanted to make it. We ended up getting the writer to write it, really try to figure out the best way to tell the story, cast it in, and we shot it a little bit over a year ago, and it's finally coming out. I'm really excited.
Well, I think you did a great job, and I always wondered, I mean, I knew the story. I'll tell you how, I mean, I was familiar with it a little bit while I was on the street, but later on, my cellmate when I was in Terminal Island Prison was Rosario Gambino. And we were together for about 2 years, and he was the one that really filled me in about Eppolito and Carapacca, because he had some dealings with Eppolito. He had gotten some information Eppolito got for him on one of the cases that he was involved with. Then we talked about it, and of course, I heard some of the guys, we talked about it afterwards. But so I'm a little bit familiar with that. But it's funny too. There was a writer. I'm not going to mention his name. He was a pretty well-known writer here in the industry, and he had visited Eppolito quite a bit, and he claimed that, he swore up and down that he was innocent, that he was framed on all of this. And I would argue with him. I said, look, I think don't let this guy con you. I said, I heard too much about it on the street, and I don't think he was framed. But let me ask you, how challenging it was to get this to the screen? Because I was wondering why it took so long.
So
Did you have challenges?
well, the challenges are basically you got to figure out who has the right if you want to tell it based on a true story. There's if something is public domain, which means there's more than 3 articles that are published in the story is told to the public, then anybody can tell the story about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
We changed the names because it's not based on a true story. It's based loosely on true events that we read about and we kind of understood. Obviously, we know who the characters are. The challenging part is nobody is really making these kind of movies anymore. The big studios are really staying away from trying to like make any, taking any risks. They're doing the big, Marvel and DC and all these kind of movies that I'm not interested in seeing. So the challenging part is you make it, but are you going to get a distribution deal? Is this actually going to be seen? And I did a movie with Grindstone Lionsgate called The Engineer, and they did very well with it. And when I came to them with this, I explained to them what I thought it could do and how interesting the film could be. And it really just came down to the cast. I had to get a really good cast to get, the right people involved. Getting Jeremy Luke for me, to play Eppolito was, Leo Benetti was amazing. And David Arquette, in this industry, you got to get a couple of names to get that distribution deal. So that was challenging, trying to get David to play this character. He's so different than what he is in his regular life. And once we were able to get the cast together and we felt like the script is ready, we ended up selling it to Grindstone Lionsgate on set before we even finished the film.
Wow, that's great. Well, I'll tell you, I thought it was cast really well. The guy that played Eppolito, he from the moment you saw him, you didn't like him. You knew what he was. He looked more like a mob guy than a cop, but I know he had relatives that were part of our family and all of that. But I thought it was cast really well. I liked the way it opened too, with you speaking to the mom of Josh, one of the murder victims there. But I got to tell you, I mean, I witnessed. I always say that we had a lot of relationships on the street. Danny, there was 750 made guys that comprised all 5 families.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, made guys. And then, of course, we had so many associates. So there was hundreds of us. So it's inevitable. I mean, I had people in my family that were NYPD. We had people we grew up in school, we went to school with in NYPD. So we had those relationships and we were able to manipulate and do some things with cops. There was a precinct in Brooklyn that 2:00 in the morning, I was walked in there. I could look through the file, see anything that I wanted because of a relationship that I had. But never, never, never to the extent of what these mob cops did. I mean, that was, the way Queso, and I knew Queso well, I knew Gaspat. The way he got these guys to move was unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story. I don't think there was ever corruption to that degree, probably anywhere in the country. I don't know.
I mean, there's one documentary called the 7-5 that I saw, which was great. Look, when I'm as a filmmaker, when I'm making a movie, there's got to be something really interesting about the characters. It can't just be that he's a cop and he's a great cop and he's taking down the bad guys. That we've seen that a million times, right? Now you take a cop that's connected to the mob and ends up, filling out paper form to become, police officer in the 70s, writes down in the paper that he has a family that are in organized crime, and they just pass him through because in the 70s, they really needed police officers. They didn't have enough people on the force, right? That's really interesting. He has a family, he has a wife, he has kids that he loves, and he's trying to be a great dad. That's interesting. When you take all of it together, and it's such a rich character and such a rich story. Forget about the fact that everything that has to do with mob is glorified and just sounds, so much more exciting than what it is. But when you take cops that are doing all this for the mob and getting away with it, and then to top it all off, the guy wants to be an actor and writes a book and goes on and goes. That's what was interesting to me. He goes to promote the book. He thinks that's it. No one's ever going to interview, no one's ever going to look into it again. He goes on this tour, and this poor woman watches him and it reminds her, she's like, wait, I know that face. Buys the book and sees the other guy in it. All of that is why I fought to try to get this movie made. Again, it's an independent film. It's small. It's not a big studio. You got to fight to tell these kind of stories. I just felt it's appealing and needs to be told, and it was never told. So I'm excited for the world to see it. And then I'm happy you got this a little sneak peek.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I actually watched it as soon as you gave it to me. I watched it that night, and I was really intrigued by it. And really, that really got me. You know, think about the audacity of this guy doing all of these things, killing people, giving up informants, doing everything, and then writing a book. You know, I mean,
that they see I mean that's why it makes for a good film. I mean, you can't make this thing up. I mean, he's in Goodfellas, probably the greatest mob movie ever made, watched by so many people. He's in there. What is going on in his head? You know, I mean, the fact that he got away with it for so long and then it comes back, that just goes to show you on karma. You know, it's like certain things in life, you know, is bigger than us. God is watching everything, and karma really comes down and at some point um, gets it in the middle of everything. It's just the way I believe. You know.
no, no question. And in the film, you know, after he got into that trouble and the judge dismissed the case, and I saw when he was in the grocery store speaking to his partner there, he was all arrogant and cocky about it. You knew at that point, you know, it's only a matter of time before this guy, because he really believed in his own, you know, whatever it was, his own ability to beat anything, you know?
No, of course, and especially when Canzano, when Arquette's character tells him we're not untouchable. It's exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Untouchable. By the way, did you see the movie? I got it on DVD.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro. I mean, it's just that whole third act of like really people that are. I really think that people in the industry are gonna see it. It really kind of portrays um what was going on in his head. I mean, he really wanted to be famous, and I think a lot of what he did was trying to be accepted. There's got to be something behind all of that. You know what I mean? Because he was a decorated cop. I mean, he had a nice family. He made money. He wasn't like, you know, some but just wanting to do all that and wanting to take it to that extreme and not stopping, it was really intriguing to me. And I think people are really going to be interested. I think Jeremy Luke, who played him, did such a phenomenal job. And David Arquette playing Canzano did a wonderful job. And Joey Russo played, you know, Casso Galliano. Wonderful, you know, and the whole cast is just. One thing I will say about my films is it's very authentic. The guys talk the way they're supposed to talk. They walk the way they're supposed to walk. They dress the way they're supposed to dress. And it's not too over the top where it just feels natural. It's the
No,
way I
no,
did.
no question. You know, and I love Bo Dietl in anything. And I know when he was in another movie with you at one point, but Bo was just, I loved him in The Irishman too. When he
He-
played that role, do you remember when he was sitting down with that? I forget, he's eating and he's talking. He's
with the
he's a
watermelon,
funny
with the
guy.
watermelon, with De Niro and
Oh
Pacino.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a
I
funny
love
guy.
Bo. I did like 3, 4 movies with him. I
Yeah.
love. He's. And by the way, I think this is his best performance. I know he's great in The Irishman. I know he's great in Wolf of Wall Street. I honestly think this is his best performance. And you ask him, he'll tell you.
Yeah, no, I agree, because he was very calm, you know, as opposed to Gas Pipe's craziness. And Joey Russo's a great character too. He
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of Joe Pesci. You know,
Yeah.
he can fly off the handle in a minute. Yeah, he was
He's
great.
very, you know, he played Crazy Joe Gallo in the
Yes,
offer.
in The Offer. Yes.
Yeah, look, for me, I going to the typical characters that you cast in everyday gangster films, uh, that's a little too on the nose for me. I really felt like I needed to cast the right people to really portray these people because you know there's another side to them. There's a family side, there's the cop side, and there's a human side to it that I really wanted to portray, and I really needed great actors behind me, and I got a great. I played the detective, you know, Delgado, and I tell the story with the narrative in it. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really, really excited for the movie to come out. I'm so excited to be on your show because I know that I get most of my information from your show. And when I saw you interview the author of the book
Yeah.
about this, I called Lopez. I said, "You told me you guys are friends." He's like, "Well, of course, my buddy. I'll make a call." I just felt like I wanted to be on the show, so being on it, I'm really excited. And I hope your audience finds the film and enjoys it.
No, they will. And like I said, I want to I'm going to tell him about it because, hey, listen, if I don't like something, I'll tell people or I just stay away from it. But no, this was a good film. And you
Wait,
know, it's funny with Gas Pipe. I had a run-in with him at one time. We were both. Well, I was in the gas business. He wasn't yet in the gas business, but there was a Russian guy. His name is Murat Balagula, and he was trying to sell. He was in the business also, and he was selling to some of our stations. You know, so I sent some guys and we kind of backed him off. And then he ran to a guy by the name of Christy Tick. I don't know if you know who Christy Fernaro. He had a place called the 19th Hole in Brooklyn. And Gas Pipe was under him. He was Gas Pipe was his soldier, and he was a captain at the time. So Balagula runs to him, and they have a sit down. Then Christy gets in touch with me, and I sit down with Gas Pipe, and he says, "You know, this guy's with me." I said, "Gas Pipe, he's not with you. He ran to you. I get it, but I have a lot of respect for Christy. Let him stay in his territory. I'll stay in mine, and we don't have any problem." So, and after that, yeah, after that, it was like he invented the whole gas business, and it was all about him and everything else. Yeah. So, I
when
mean,
we
I
did
had my little
research,
thing.
when I did the research, I started watching all these 60-minute interviews, and I really wanted to understand who he was, and I could not believe what I was seeing. I mean, he did not seem to me like someone that could come up with a gas business in my mind. It was more about, oh, this is great, I'm gonna take it
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, and that was it. And Marat, the guy that ran to him, he was a big player at the time. He ended up dying, I think, a couple of years later, but he was a big player. But hey, that was a whole different operation, Danny. That was, I tell you what, there was nothing bigger for my former life since the days of prohibition than what we were doing in the gas business. No question about it. So everybody wanted a piece. I get it. And I understand it back then.
I did some homework, and again, because I'm so into this whole world, I read everything. I read about you. I read about this whole gas thing that you guys were doing. So I'm familiar with a lot with it, and it's a known fact that the mob never liked drugs. It's the same money without the same risk, and it so obviously that would be something that everybody would jump on. Were you the? I think you were the first one, right? If I'm
You know, I don't know if we were the first, but we were certainly the best. We just figured it out in a way that they couldn't touch us. Look, I ran that operation for 8 years, and I had a lot of the Russians from Brighton Beach were with me on it. You know, we made an incredible amount of money together. They were my best partners, quite honestly. They really were. But my partner, if he don't become informant, because he and I designed it together, and honestly, he was more the brains than I was. He just came up with the idea, and I was able to fine tune it in a way that we wouldn't get caught, no matter what the government did. But then he became an informant, and he blew the lid on everything, and that's how it went down eventually. But that's what happens in that life, Eventually, it's going to happen.
again, it comes back to the same thing. From afar, it just seems so attractive and so amazing. And you put me in a movie, I can act like the biggest tough guy in the world. Being around all those guys growing up, it was fascinating to me. But you have to actually have the balls to understand it, that at some point it's either you go to jail or you're dead, and that's the kind of life you want. I mean, I think I don't know that much. I mean, what do I know? I'm a filmmaker now, but that doesn't really exist anymore, right? I mean, it's just everyone has kind of moved on, and there's so many other things.
Danny, it's not going to go away in my lifetime, but a lot of people out there, they want to blame John Gotti for the demise of that life. And I can say this, and I knew John. John wasn't good for the life because, look, we're not supposed to be thumbing our nose in the face of the government. We do bring a lot of heat. He wasn't the first guy that did that. I mean, Joe Colombo was way out there. There were guys that were out there, and it doesn't do you any good because it brings a lot of attention. But he didn't bring the life down. What brought the life down was the RICO statute, no
Yeah,
doubt about it. And
well,
you got
Giuliani got involved with the RICO Act, and he can blame you. You be responsible for something just being as an associate. I remember reading a whole thing about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, that statute, what it did a couple of things. Number one, murder was always a state case. It was never a federal case. But under the RICO statute, it became a federal crime. So, when all of these murders were being talked about, a lot of guys became informants, and they were promised a lot of things. They became informants, and the life started to collapse. it's not going to go away in my lifetime, but it's not anywhere near what it was during my lifetime. Because I always say the golden era, if you want to say, of Cosa Nostra in our country, was really from the mid 40s right through the mid 80s when Rico collapsed everything. But after that, it's never going to be the same.
Yeah,
Never.
I mean, from what again, now I made a film about Maya Lansky called Lansky, which I love the story about Maya Lansky. Um, everything was just so different when not. I mean, today I can't see it being the same because everybody's got a cell phone. Everyone can take pictures of everything. There are cameras everywhere. You know, technology really had a lot to do with it. The RICO Act. Really, put a law in place where, but technology as well. You know, it's like you can't really get away with much. Uh,
No.
without. So look, in my mind, I'll continue to make films that are based on the past. I think because moving forward, something that's very. I will say this: I don't see myself making a movie that takes place in 2025 about that life. Doesn't make any sense to me.
No,
I,
I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be anything that people would be attracted to. And I have to say this, and I want people to understand this too. That was a really dark time in the NYPD what these guys did. But people say, oh, all these cops are corrupt. And I said, no, they're not all corrupt. Look, there isn't an agency on the planet that doesn't need some kind of reform. Every
yeah.
government, they're the worst agencies in the world. They all need reform. Anywhere you go, from the US to Russia and everywhere in between. The Catholic Church needs reform. Nonprofits everything needs reform. So we understand that. But
Oh,
mostly, police, they do their job. I mean, they do their job. They're not,
look, I am a true believer that the police are the good guys. I didn't make this film to try to glorify anyone or try to make anyone look bad. This is the story. This is what happened. I'm a filmmaker. The character spoke to me. I felt like it would be interesting. But God forbid, I am not. I am not trying to glorify what they did. And I'm not trying to say that there's a few bad apples. It doesn't mean everybody else. Um, and, and again, when you're making a film, and there's so many films about that life, how do you tell a story that's a little different? You try to find that little edge and something that's a little unique and a little different, and that's just my job to try to find the most unique stories. With the Inside Man. I couldn't believe that story was never told for one simple reason is that the most notorious hitman in the history of the just little things like that, just really taglines that really work.
no, and in Mob Cops, that's a story that should be told because their behavior was so outrageous that people need to understand this is obviously not something that the police department normally does, but it's so outrageous. I mean, I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think there was any conduct in any law enforcement agency as bad as that. I can't think of anything about it, and I usually follow up on these things.
The 7-5, watch that documentary. It's a pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I know
pretty
that,
crazy.
yeah, some crazy things happen in Louisiana too. That city down New Orleans is kind of that's that's uh that's a corrupt city, but still I guess because it's my life that's involved with it, and I'm saying, wow, how they got them to do this stuff was really crazy. But let me ask you, what do you got going on after this movie? What's
So
coming up next?
So I did this a year and something ago. It comes out Friday. Then I made a film called The Perfect Gamble, that we shot. We shot it mostly overseas. I shot the whole movie overseas in Georgia. It's about two guys from Brooklyn that are gamblers. They go to jail. They come out. One of them has family in Georgia, the country, and he
Uh-huh.
goes and opens a illegal casino there. And the Russian mob comes and gets involved and tries to shake them down. It's really good. Oh, back again with David Arquette, and I casted Daniela Pig Tarantino, Quentin Tarantino's wife, in it.
Oh, wow.
Um, really, really good film. Saban Films picked it up. That comes out late August, beginning of September. And I made a movie that is life changing called 12 Hours in October about what happened on October 7th that
Wow.
Lionsgate is going to put out. Um, that's what I got for now. I've been really busy trying to make all this happen. Now it's the exciting time. The premiere is happening Wednesday. I would have loved for you to come to the premiere if you're in town.
Yeah, I know. I'm leaving for New York tomorrow. I got a couple of things doing back there. Although I would have loved to attend. I would have definitely been there.
Bo is on his
Where
way over here.
what's that?
Bo is on his way here. Bo Lanes.
Oh, is he?
Or,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Tell him I'm mad at him. I texted him. He didn't text me back. But sometimes
He
he takes a
called me.
week before.
He
Yeah.
called me. He said, "Oh, I heard you speaking to Michael." I said, "Yeah." Lopez put us together. "Oh, yeah, I've known him for years. Yeah, I've known him for years. Great guy." I said, "So, yeah, Bo's coming with his girl for the premiere. A lot of people are going to be here. The premiere's on Wednesday. The movie comes out on Friday, and we're very excited."
Sorry, I'm gonna miss it, man.
I would
But
have loved
listen, you got another fan here because I love the movie. I'm going to be talking about it to everybody. Listen, we needed another movie like this. Past couple that came out, I'm not going to mention them. Wasn't too happy with, but we needed a movie like this. So I'm glad you filled that gap.
I got to tell you, that's the best thing I ever heard because I am not trying to. I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I am not trying to say. I just feel like this particular movie. I said the same thing about Inside Man. It just feels right. The characters feel right, and it's portrayed right. And it really just pays attention to the little details. And someone like yourself who has been in that world, obviously, and it sees that, and I really appreciate that. That means the most to me than anything else.
No, and I want to tell you this, from what I know of the situation, again, talking to people that were involved with them, I had a cellmate, 2 years I was with him. I really think you nailed the story, pretty accurate as far as the way these guys acted and behaved and, their true character, their true personalities. Caracappa was more the calm guy, a little bit more sensible, and he tried to rein Eppolito in at times. He was still, pretty bloodthirsty guy, no question, but he was kind of the voice of reason, and that's what I heard. I heard it the same way, and Eppolito was just who he was, the way you portrayed him.
In all the research we did, we kind of felt like, well, he wanted to be an actor. The kind of person that wants to be an actor is a very outgoing, social person. So he was always the focal point of what this big character could be, you know.
Yeah.
And then always reading about the other guy, he was always like subdued. He just didn't want. He really wanted to just keep to himself. So casting them was really important. I thought Jeremy did an incredible job, and so did David and Joey and Lorenzo Antonucci, who plays Josh Hughes, and Costafine. Everybody just did a great job. It was really hard for me to cast it. A lot of people really wanted to be in this, and I felt like that's the number one rule is to find the right people to portray these guys. So I didn't.
My last observation, I think if Gaspipe didn't get in trouble and eventually become an informant, which blew the whistle on this thing, I don't think either one of these guys would have made it too far. I think he would have killed him, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I felt like once they moved out to
Vegas.
Vegas, you would assume they just go and have a quiet life. They die old people with
Yeah.
But he starts writing a book and bringing him back out there. They would have killed him. They would have
They would have been gone.
Yeah, there's no way they would have just let him continue to go on this. I mean, he literally went on a press tour. He's doing the morning shows. I mean, it's just that's not something. I mean, especially back then, nobody wanted to talk about anything.
No, and it's guys like that. It's kind of like I call it the OJ syndrome. Look, I was pretty close to that because, OJ's kids would dance with my girls. We were in dance class together, and we had the same agent, Jack Gilardi at ICM, who was a dear friend of mine. I believe the guy got away with murder. You get away with murder, go away, keep quiet, stay out of the public. You don't realize what you beat in your life, but these guys have that syndrome. I don't know what's, I don't understand it.
Again, he could not. He wants to be that guy. He cannot. It doesn't. And again, in his mind, he got away with it for so long. He figured. I mean, at this point, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Not thinking that karma is going to come back and bite him in the ass. Where a woman in Staten Island is watching TV, and sees him, and starts the whole thing. She calls and goes and gets the book. She recognizes both of them, and that triggers the whole thing. They would have gotten away with it. It was done. No one was looking into it.
No, I know that's the amazing thing. Nobody after they moved out, it was a dead issue, a quiet issue, and then she happens to see him on television, and that was an eerie scene for me. You know, that's the mother who lost her son, and everything just clicked with her, and then she reaches out to you, you know, the police officer, and it was a brilliant way to start the movie. It really
Thank
was, you know, through
thank you.
her eyes. I really,
Yeah,
it hooked me right away.
thank you. Yeah, Costa did a great job, our writer, and Lionel, the music, everything. Everything is so calculated when I'm making a film like this because honestly don't want to be so on the nose. It's not like, anybody, I feel like any movie like that could just be very, your typical gangster, where I felt a lot of it is this poor woman. And the reason they doing this is because this mom who just wants that closure about her kid, that motivation really starts everything. That really was a big part of telling the story. We could have just told the story about exactly what happened. He kills this one, this guy kills this one. We really felt like the mom and the motivation to try to get her closure really pushed these guys to get this thing done.
Yeah, and you know, and the way it ended too, I'm not going to give it away at this moment, but the way it ended, you approaching her again, and it was sad. I mean, you know, something like that gets you. It really does. But hey, brilliantly done, Danny. You know, I think you did a wonderful job on it. I really hope the movie takes off. I think it will. You know,
Oh,
Lionsgate will do their job in getting it out there, and I only wish I wasn't missing the premiere on Wednesday. But hey,
honestly, I wish you were there, but I'm sure you have a lot of things to do in New York. Again, I wanted to thank you. I'm a big fan of yours. I watch it all the time. I'm excited to be on this. Excited because I feel like you are talking to the audience that really we want to get to. It's like I told Lopez, I'm going to do Access Hollywood and I'm going to do all these shows, but it's not close to anything that I'm gonna do like I'm doing this one with you because this is talking to the audience that we're trying to reach. Um, Anyone who's interested in that world, anyone who's interested in that life, and stories about it, I think this is the right movie for them. So I really appreciate you having me on.
well, you got it, my friend. And listen, we'll stay in touch. And when I come into LA, if you're in town, dinner on me. How's that
I would
sound?
love that, and we gotta get Lopez there.
That's a deal. Yeah, I know he's always busy, but we'll drag him
Oh,
into it.
we'll
It's
get him
okay.
out. We'll get him out.
All right, my
I
friend.
really appreciate you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. Well, there you have it. I would expect that some of you that are into mob genre, if you've seen Danny, he's not only done mob-related films, as he said, he's done others. If you look at his history, he's done a lot of work and did a good job on this. And I think it was a good conversation. So I really suggest that you see the film. Like I said, it's coming out tomorrow in theaters nationwide, also on video on demand. Watch it. And remember this, people. This was based upon a true story. These cops, and they got away with a lot for a long time, and it's amazing, amazing when you see how they got themselves in trouble. It's this whole O.J. Simpson syndrome. Here's a guy that, in my view, and I think in the view of many, many people, most of the people, he got away with murder, a horrific murder. Murdered his wife, another young man that just happened to be almost an innocent bystander in all of this, got away with it for whatever reasons he did. We all know about the case but couldn't stay out of the limelight, And I say, man, if you get away with something like that, disappear, go away, don't ever be seen again. Just, thank God, get on your knees for whatever reason. God spared you from this, consequence that could have been, life-changing for you and unbelievable. But some people just can't stay out of it. I don't want to give the film away. But it's really amazing how these guys put themselves in a situation that really didn't have to be. And that's how it goes in life sometimes, people that just can't stay out of the limelight. Sometimes you get a lucky break and you got to just be thankful for it and move on, move on. But some people can't do it. A lot of exciting twists throughout this film that I think you're going to see. Again, I think the characters, they portrayed these two people pretty well. Because remember, I read about them in that book, and their characters were described pretty accurately. They're real life characters in Blood and the Badge. And then I get the opportunity to see the movie, and I say, you know what? He captured it really well. So they did a really good job. Opens tomorrow. Don't miss it. It's one of those films that you just should see. And again, people, like Danny said in the interview, you don't hold the whole NYPD responsible for a couple of bad apples. It happens. And I've said this many a times. There isn't an agency on the face of the earth that doesn't need some kind of reform. Governments all over the world, they need the most reform. Right here in the United States, I don't care where you go, Russia, China, North Korea, you name it, they all need some kind of reform. Catholic Church needs reform. Many foundations and nonprofits need, every organization could use some type of reform. You always have something going wrong, whatever. But you don't fault the entire agency for something like that. The United States government, probably the best system. It is the best system of government in the world. But has it been corrupted? We know that, it's the same of anything. So we're not holding the whole NYPD responsible for that. And Danny points that out. But these were two bad apples, to the extreme. And this was the result of it. So again, great movie. Catch it on video on demand or get to the theaters and watch it. You got it. And my friends, how do I always leave you? Same way. Never going to change. Be safe. You know the deal there. Country's getting safer. Be healthy. Hopefully that's happening too. RFK, give him some chance. It's only been a couple of months that he's there. Let's see what he's going to do. Be safe. Be healthy. My friends, I really mean this. God bless each and every one of you. Families, friends, neighborhoods, communities. And yes, God bless America. I'll see you next time. Take care. My friends, if you enjoyed this video, I'm going to give you an opportunity to become my partner in business. Franzese Wine experiencing tremendous growth over the past couple of years, and we're going to experience even further growth in the next few years. You're going to have an opportunity to be my partner because you've been supporting me, you've been my fan base, and I want to share this with you. So go to invest.franzesewine.com, and offer you shouldn't refuse.